The UFC sells violence as entertainment, but behind the knockouts and roaring crowds, fighters pay the real price. This is the untold story of blood, money, and power in the world's most brutal sport. The Ultimate Fighting Championship dominates combat sports, boasting a $12 billion empire and a global fan base enthralled by its raw, unfiltered violence. Yet behind the blood-soaked glory lies a darker reality: exploited fighters, life-altering injuries, and a culture that profits from brutality. From political alliances with controversial figures to antitrust lawsuits exposing systemic greed, the UFC's rise reveals uncomfortable truths about modern entertainment. As governments fund events and fighters risk everything for meager pay, one question lingers. Is this the pinnacle of athleticism, or a ruthless business masquerading as sport? The UFC sells itself as the pinnacle of combat sports, a world built on skill, discipline, and raw aggression. But beneath the flashy pay-per-view spectacles and roaring crowds lies an unsettling truth. The organization thrives on violence, and its fans are hooked. Fighters speak openly about their addiction to the chaos, with some admitting, "I love violence. That's the only place I feel calm." For them, the octagon isn't just a battleground, it's an escape, even as they endure brutal knockouts, concussions, and career-altering injuries. The audience, too, is complicit. Fans cheer for blood, with one admitting, "I like seeing people bleed and get knocked down." This isn't just sport, it's organized brutality packaged as entertainment. The UFC's marketing leans hard into this allure, promoting fighters as modern-day gladiators who live by a code of merciless combat. Yet, as the stakes grow higher, so do the consequences. Fighters like Jack Della Maddalena describe the mental toll, comparing each match to a mental chess game with dire consequences. The question lingers: is this a celebration of athleticism, or has the UFC crossed into something darker, a culture that glorifies pain as profit? Behind the UFC's $12 billion empire lies a harsh reality. Many fighters risk their health for meager paychecks. Unlike major sports leagues, UFC athletes are classified as independent contractors, leaving them without benefits like health insurance or retirement plans. Even rising stars face financial strain. Training camps can cost $50,000, while entry-level fighters earn just $10,000 per fight, half of which vanishes if they lose. Bec Rawlings, a former UFC fighter, described living paycheck to paycheck, forced to accept unfavorable matchups just to survive. "I had to take every fight because I needed the money," she admitted. Tyson Pedro, another veteran, revealed that after training expenses, he often ended up in debt, joking grimly about robbing someone in the car park to cover costs. The UFC's business model thrives on this imbalance, with fighters receiving less than 20% of revenue, far below the 50% standard in other sports. When fighters like Nate Quarry spoke out, they were blacklisted or given impossible matchups. "They treat it like a business but expect us to fight for passion," Quarry said. As the UFC's profits soar, many fighters are left broken, both financially and physically, wondering if the dream was ever worth the sacrifice. Every punch, kick, and knockout in the UFC comes with a hidden cost, one that fighters carry long after the crowd's cheers fade. The physical toll is staggering: shattered bones, torn ligaments, and gruesome facial reconstructions. Nate Quarry, a UFC veteran, counts 19 screws in his body from years of combat, while others describe the eerie aftermath of concussions, memory lapses, mood swings, and bouts of paranoia. "Am I going to remember my kids' names in 10 years?" one fighter wonders aloud. The sport's most insidious threat, however, is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a degenerative brain disease linked to repeated head trauma. Fighters train smarter now, sparring less to protect their brains, but the damage often compounds silently. Bec Rawlings fractured her hip during a weight cut, leaving her broken sidelined, while others battle addiction and depression as they struggle to adapt to life outside the octagon. Even champions like Jack Della Maddalena admit, "Getting hit in the head isn't ideal." Yet they push forward, knowing the risks. The UFC touts its safety protocols, But for many fighters, the real reckoning comes decades later, when the lights dim and their bodies begin to fail. The UFC's influence extends far beyond the octagon, weaving itself into the fabric of global politics and culture. Dana White, the promotion's outspoken CEO, has forged close ties with Donald Trump, who once hosted UFC events at his casinos when the sport was banned in many states. This relationship reached new heights when White stood beside Trump at his presidential inauguration, an unprecedented moment for a fight promoter. The UFC's alignment with right-wing politics doesn't stop there. Fighters like Sean Strickland, known for racist and sexist rants, are given a platform, their controversies leveraged for clicks and ticket sales. "He says what he wants, and if you don't like it, tough," shrugs one fan, echoing the promotion's free speech branding. Meanwhile, governments like New South Wales pour millions into UFC events, framing them as economic boosts while ignoring criticism of the sport's ethics. "We're competing with other states for these deals," officials say, as taxpayer money flows to a billion-dollar enterprise. The UFC's political playbook is clear: profit from polarization, silence dissenters, and expand its empire, no matter the collateral damage. Beneath the spectacle of championship belts and sold-out arenas, the UFC operates like a monopoly, controlling fighters' careers with restrictive contracts that stifle their earning power. Internal documents showed fighters received less than 20% of revenue, while the UFC pocketed billions. "They made sure we never got a fair share," said Nate Quarry, a lead plaintiff in the class action. After a decade-long legal battle, the UFC settled for $375 million, a fraction of its profits, leaving many fighters with barely enough to cover medical bills. If the UFC's dark side shocked you, hit that like button. It helps more people see these untold stories.